Hey everybody, this is Pastor Chris. I'm coming to you live from Lexington Park Baptist Church, and this is PC Studios. It is July the 6th, 2022. How in the world are you doing? I hope you are blessed, highly favored by God. Hey, this week is Patriot Pastor Week. This is the 4th of July week, so we're going to talk about different things. You can see I got the flag behind me, not normally back there, but wanting to talk about our faith and our freedom, and looking at those two things. So the one thing I'm going to talk about is I'm wanting to go through some of the national monuments in history or places of our nation that maybe people don't know about. And today, yesterday we talked about the Washington Monument, praise be to God, on the top and in the cornerstone, but that the Bible was there with the Constitution Declaration, clearly showing that people as early back within 50 to 75 years of the Declaration believed that was a founding principle, to put a Bible in the cornerstone of the Washington Monument in the early 1800s. That is huge. That is huge, you all. So the evidence is clear, even though people tried to eradicate, ignore it, twist it, all kinds of stuff. So there's another one I want to talk about today, which is the Capitol. There's a lot of religious symbology and things of the Capitol, but not necessarily as evidential as Washington Monument. But I want to talk about the chapel that's in the Capitol. First of all, unless you're a member of Congress, you can't use the chapel. So unfortunately, it's not open to the public. But there is a chapel that's there. And that chapel has served presidents, has served Congress people. In 1952, Congress issued a joint resolution calling for a prayer service on the steps of the Capitol. Anyway, they prayed underneath the inscription, "In God We Trust." They furthermore prayed and said, "Preserve me, God, for in Thee do I put my trust." That's inscribed in the window. So in the chapel, you have a picture of General Washington, a stained glass window, praying, "In God We Trust," and the saying, "Preserve me, God, for Thee do I put my trust." So, and now I realize this in the 1950s, okay? So that gets us a little bit. But before that, there wasn't a chapel there. However, this is where I want us to go back. Even though there wasn't a specific chapel there, they held church in the Capitol from the origins of our nation. Now, what we have is, we've mentioned, so Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and other forefathers would have worshiped in the Capitol of the United States. There was no other church in the time. District of Columbia didn't have any churches at the time, and so they would meet in the Capitol. Thomas Jefferson would attend these services throughout his presidency, the third president of the United States of America. Many call him a deist, but yet the language of what he was weird. Thomas Jefferson was weird. Let's get this. His faith was weird. His religiosity was weird. His view of Christianity and the Bible were just bizarro. They're not like what we would think of Christianity today. However, even though he's part of the Enlightenment, he had some very immoral issues in his life, sexually and also with slavery, although he knew it was wrong. Didn't solve the problem. So yes, he was a man of his day, trying to do right things, and didn't solve all the problems he had to face. And that's like many of us today will be looked at and judged from the time we live. Why didn't you do this, or why didn't you do that? So I think that's wrong to do. But as far as his religiosity, a deist I think is too extreme, because the words he uses and the things he says are more like he really believes, just like Ben Franklin too, that God's involved in the affairs of mankind. He wrote in the Jefferson Memorial, we know it says God will not stay silent. He's going to rise up and judge us. So anyway, throughout his time, he would go and attend service, and he would, at the same time, he was writing to Danbury Baptist. Remember, I talked about that, to say there will be a wall of separation, church and state. He was saying, so at the same time he's attending worship in the Capitol, he wrote the letter to the Danbury Baptist, telling us that people's perspective of separation of church and state is not what Thomas Jefferson intended. He wanted to say, government will stay out of church. You worship as you want. We're not going to have a state religion. but it is Christianity. He knew it was Christianity, but there was no qualms with worship, Christian worship, which is what it was, in the Capitol. So I want you to see that and know that fact. There is a chapel in the Capitol. All the way back to Thomas Jefferson, they worshiped in the Capitol. Even James Madison, when he was president, now we're moving up, right? Because you're moving up. He even in his presidency worshiped there. And he is the founding father that wrote the Constitution, the great author of it, where Jefferson was the author of the Declaration. We have Madison being the author of the Constitution. Well, he didn't have a problem either. He worshiped in the Capitol, Christian worship, and he wrote the religious clauses. He wrote the comment that would have said freedom of religion, not meaning it from, but of religion. So I think when we look at the history of the Capitol and we look at the worship that took place there between Jefferson and Madison and others, we see a true indication that the separation of church and state is not what people today try to make it to be. That we were a Christian nation, that we did worship the God of the Scriptures, that we were not going to establish a Christian religion that would be the state religion. And they wanted a wall of separation of that. That was Thomas Jefferson to the Danbury. Now, Madison, freedom of religion, he clearly meant, he's talking Christianity, you guys. He wasn't thinking of all these other faiths out there. He was thinking, look, you have the freedom to worship as you want the God that's over our nation. And, whether that would have been any of the Protestant denominations, but even Catholicism coming in, even though there was discrimination against Catholics initially, and that's why Maryland has a history of that, and the Religious Tolerance Act of Maryland. So anyway, there's just history there. Many of us don't know. And so now I want to move into what I preached on Sunday, preaching on this cause. Rise up, O God, and champion your cause. Psalm 74:22. And God is wanting to make sure that we do his causes. So many of the causes come from that the sermon that I preach comes from this book right here. And so we can see political sermons from the American founding era. So this book is dating sermons of different pastors from 1730 to 1805. So we're dealing with revolutionary time period. Prior to it, though, we're dealing prior to it. We're dealing with the actual Declaration time and the Revolution time. This is covering those sermons. So I want you to hear some, not just the sermon that I preached Sunday was from October 5th, 1777 by Abraham Catullus. He preached in a Presbyterian church, and he preached boldly the causes of Christ. But there's other sermons that are in this book that I want to just kind of share with you. The titles that you would see, what they were preaching on. They were preaching against slavery, you all. Sermons were talking about this. Government is a pillar of God. What? We don't talk like that. But they realized government was a pillar. They had essential rights and liberties of Protestants. Civil magistrates must be just, ruling with the fear of God. Could you imagine that? Our politicians have to rule with the fear of God. They also had sermons and appeal to the public for religious liberty. Scriptural instructions to civil rulers. Scriptural instructions to our politicians. That was a sermon. That was a sermon that was preached in this time era. How about this? Divine judgments upon tyranny. A dialogue between the devil and George III. Wow. How about this? Defensive arms vindicated. In other words, Second Amendment rights. The danger of our national prosperity, warning us that greed can get in the way. The Republic of the Israelites and an example to the American states. So there's a sermon that was preached saying Israel is God's divine nation and America is parallel to it. We're an example. Israel's an example to America that we need to be under God. Pretty powerful sermon. A discourse on the love of our country, the duty of America at this present crisis, the evils of a weak government, the voice of warning to Christians, a solemn address to Christians and patriots, and overcoming evil with good. Also, sermons on slavery, sermons on freedoms, sermons on making sure all people are treated with equality. So the founding pastors, not just the founding fathers. The founding fathers we can see here in this book the quotes by them. But the founding pastors are preaching the gospel right alongside of the politicians. Right alongside it, you have founding pastors and politicians, fathers, creating our nation. And we can't lose this history. It's been lost. And my talking this week is to make sure that we know the truth about our nation. Yes, there's many faults in our nation. There's many problems. So let's look at some of the causes that Catullus brings up. Just some of them I want to read today. The cause of truth from Deuteronomy 32:4 and John 14:6. God is righteous and true. He's a rock. He's a rock of truth. There's no other truth but Christ. He's the way and the truth and the life. The cause of religion. Listen to this. Undefiled religion. James 1:27. Pure and undefiled religion. That's in the Bible. Pure and undefiled religion. In other words, religion that's true. Before God the Father is this. You look after orphans and widows in their distress and keep oneself unstained from the world. There's other causes we're going to talk about tomorrow. But today I want you to see this. True religion takes care of those that are less fortunate. The orphan and the widow. We think of those that aren't treated with equality. We think of those that do have a hard life, those in poverty, true poverty. And we want to take care of each other. We want to be a virtuous people, all right? We want to be a virtuous nation, but we also want to be a virtuous religion. Christianity should be a virtuous religion. So we want to take care of those things, but we also need to be unstained by the world. Now, I don't know exactly what James may have meant by that, but the ways of the world, secularism, paganism, culture, when you look at our world today and the ideologies of the world, really there's nothing new under the sun. So any ideology that's against the Word of God would stain us. And so what James is saying, a true religion stays away from that worldly philosophy and makes sure that their philosophy is biblical, a biblical worldview. And that's what makes us a true religion. So that is a cause of God. Rise up, O God, champion your cause of religion. Rise up, O God, champion your cause of truth. Rise up, O God, champion your cause of righteousness. Get this from Micah. Righteousness from Matthew 6:33. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. Then rise up, O God, champion your cause of justice. Justice we need, Micah 6:8. I think in today's world, and it says, this is what I demand of you, O man or woman of God, that you must do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your Lord, with your God. And as we do that, we'll find justice, God's justice, not our justice, not a justice that rises a fist and tries to divide us by color of skin, not a justice that shoots people at the 4th of July parade. There's so much evil in our world. We don't get our way and we complain. Not the ugliness, attacking pregnancy centers and attacking churches and places of worship now because abortion is now back to the states and not necessarily a constitutional right. There's so much hostility and anger in our society. It's not just. There might be some justice to some things, like we do want women's rights, but women's rights is not what they've made it to be with this abortion thing. We want women to be able to vote and be able to be educated and go out and be who they want to be. That's what I want to see for my daughters. That's what I want to see for my son, too. Equality for him as well. Equality for all, regardless of the color of their skin, or male and female. I don't get into the LGBTQ things. That's not a just cause. It's a lifestyle. It's not something they can change. It's not something they're born with. It's not a constitutional right. So it doesn't mean we can discriminate or that we're mean. No. So rise up, O God, and champion your cause of justice. We want to see equality. We want to see righteousness. We want to see truth. We want to see true religion. These things will make for a better society. All of those things. And then the cause of America, Abraham Catullus talks. Liberty is the parent. So liberty is the parent of truth, of justice, of virtue, of patriotism, of benevolence, and every generous and noble purpose. Listen, that is supposed to be the cause of America. If we really are about liberty, which is what we're founded upon, if we really are about that freedom, first of all, wherever the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. So if we have liberty, then the Spirit of the Lord is here. True liberty. This is important. True liberty that parents truth, that brings about justice, that brings about virtue, that brings about patriotism, this love of country, that brings about us to be benevolent, charity and love, and every generous and noble purpose upon the earth. That is the cause of God. So rise up, O God, champion your cause. Help us to champion those causes of America for truth and justice and virtue and patriotism, benevolence, and every generous and noble purpose. You know, imagine if our nation, our flag right here, imagine if we really did that with our liberty. See, if our liberty produces violence, it's not justice. If our liberty divides us, then it's not a noble purpose. If our liberty is creating victims and oppressors, if it's eradicating history, then it's not patriotism. Are you tracking with what I'm saying here? So today's view of America's cause of liberty is so distorted and messed up. It's not virtuous. It's not just. It's not true. It's not patriotic. It's not benevolent. It's not noble in its purpose or generous. Now, there is some of those things. I believe I am that type of liberty bearer. I seek virtue. I see goodness and nobleness and truth and justice and patriotism, benevolence. Yes, I want to see our church do that. I want to see you do that. I want to do that. But there's many in our nation that are not. And there are many people, and it's from an ideology of liberal progressivism that tries to make up the constitutional rights that don't exist and tries to force this liberty that is not really liberty. It's chaos. It's divisiveness. It's discord, and it's destructive. And a house that's divided cannot stand. No, we don't have a perfect union. No, we don't have a perfect nation. But you know what? We can create a better government. Can create a better way. And how do we do that? Rise up, O God. Rise up, O God, and champion your cause over America. So as we look at this patriotic week, those are some things to think about. I hope something I've said today will inspire you and encourage you and maybe drive you to, see things a little different about America and about what we have. Hey, that's all I've got for you today. I'll be back here tomorrow at noon. Have a great day. Remember these two realities. God loves you, and so do I. You take care. Have a good day.